All right, so March Madness, huh? For those of us who are, really into the NBA draft, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, you said it. It's like, you see these guys playing, and it's almost like a movie trailer for the NBA.
Mm,
Like, you get these glimpses of potential future stars.
exactly. Exactly. And their performance now can like completely change how scouts view them and their potential. I mean, we're talking about, guys potentially moving up or down, way down.
Oh, yeah.
The draft board, so much is at stake. And that's actually what we're diving deep into today. We're going to be looking at the NBA draft landscape, but through the very specific lens of the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. It's a lens that can magnify things, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And we're doing all of this thanks to this really fascinating article that we found on hoopstock.net. It's titled, What NBA Scouts Should Be Looking For in March Madness.
Yeah, it's a great piece. It really captures the excitement and the volatility of this time of year.
You mentioned volatility, and that's actually a perfect segue because, at the heart of all this, at the center of all this conversation is Cooper Flagg. This guy, he's been, the consensus #1 pick for what seems like forever. When you just look at his season, I mean, 18.9 points, 7.5 rebounds, 1.3 blocks per game, efficient shooting. I mean, the guy's a phenomenal talent.
He's got that, that rare all-around game that NBA teams just drool over. It's not often you see a player at his age with his combination of scoring, rebounding, defensive instincts. He does it all.
He's got it all, and he really does. I mean, the kid is special, but here's where the drama comes in, right? And this is what the hoopstock.net article really highlights, is Flagg was dealing with an injury during the ACC tournament, and now he's trying to, push through it in March Madness. And so the article lays out these different scenarios, right? And it's fascinating. It's like, what if he has a poor showing? The injury is bothering him. He doesn't look like himself. That could actually lead to him, going back to Duke for another year.
It's possible. I mean, you never know.
Right. On the other hand, if he has a really strong tournament, plays through the pain, looks great, that almost certainly means he's declaring for the NBA.
Almost certainly, yeah.
And get this, hoopstock.net even suggests that if Duke wins the whole thing, wins the championship, even that might not guarantee that Flagg leaves.
It's interesting, right? It really raises the stakes, I think, for NBA teams.
Yeah.
How do they evaluate a player when, he's playing hurt?
It's tough. It's like a high-stakes poker game where you can't quite see all the cards.
Exactly. A decline in his play, even if it's because of the injury, could make teams think twice about making him the top pick.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the implications here are huge, right? I mean, if Flagg isn't at his best because of this injury, he could slide down the draft board, and that #1 spot, which we all thought was his, it's suddenly up for grabs.
And that kind of uncertainty, that ripple effect, goes through the entire draft. Every team, every prospect is affected by that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like a chain reaction. So okay, let's play this out, right? Let's say Flagg's draft stock does take a hit. Who are the players that we should be looking at as potential beneficiaries?
Well, hoopstock.net brings up two names right off the bat, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, the freshman from Rutgers.
Gertz, yeah.
Both of these guys had, really impressive freshman seasons. Harper averaged 19.4 points. Bailey right there with him at 17.6 points. Those are big numbers.
Those are great numbers, especially for freshmen.
Especially in a major conference. I mean, that definitely catches the eye of NBA scouts.
No doubt, no doubt. But Hookstock.net also makes a point of adding some context here, right? They point out that Harper and Bailey played in a Big Ten conference that, this year it was let's just say a little weaker than usual.
Yeah, they didn't exactly, in their words, live up to their potential.
Exactly. So while their individual stats are really strong, you also have to consider the level of competition they were playing against.
Right. Were those numbers inflated because they were playing against, some weaker teams in the conference? It's a fair question for scouts to be asking.
It's a very fair question. And here's the other thing. Their season is over.
Right.
They don't have this platform of the NCAA tournament to make one last statement. They don't have the chance to prove themselves against the best of the best.
Right.
And meanwhile, you've got other players who are still playing, guys who are in the tournament, who have this chance to really shine, to really make a move.
And that's the beauty of March Madness.
Yeah.
Every game is a chance to make a statement, to elevate your stock.
Absolutely. Speaking of guys who just saw their season end, Hoopstock.net also briefly mentions Trey Johnson. He just got eliminated from the tournament.
Yeah, I saw that.
He had a great final game, put up 23 points. But the scout who wrote the Hoopstock.net article, He noted that while Johnson is a really impressive shooter, there were also some signs of, maybe some early nervousness, some areas for improvement in his decision making.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Even in a player's last college game, scouts are still evaluating every little thing.
Mm.
And the tournament, with its intensity and pressure, it really gives them a clearer picture of how players handle those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where we see what these guys are really made of. So now hoopstock.net brings up this really interesting point. They say that if, and this is a big if, but if Cooper Flagg doesn't enter the draft, this draft class would be considered weaker,
Weaker, yeah.
even compared to last year's
That's a
draft.
bold
It's
statement.
a bold statement, and it really shows you just how highly they regard Flagg.
It does. It really sets the stage for, understanding that while there are a lot of talented players in this draft, Flagg is seen as a potential franchise changer.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy who could come in and have an immediate impact on a team. So okay, let's move on then. Let's talk about some of the other players who could potentially rise to the top of the draft if Flagg's situation changes or if they just have incredible tournaments. Hoopstock.net has this list, and it includes some really interesting names. VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, Duke's Kamen Maluak and Contunipol, Kasparas Jakusionis from Illinois, Oklahoma's Jeremiah Fears, and Derek Queen from Maryland. That's a lot of talent.
That's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And a lot of potential.
And a lot of potential. So let's start with those Duke guys, since Flagg's injury directly impacts the opportunities they might get, right?
Exactly. I mean, with Flagg potentially limited, players like Conquipple and Kamen Maloak are probably going to see an increase in their minutes and their offensive opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's something that scouts will be watching very closely.
Absolutely. Hoopstock.net specifically points out Kruckle, who's averaging 14.4 points and 4 rebounds a game. They believe he has a real chance to showcase his scoring ability in these high-stakes tournament games, especially in those early rounds where Duke is expected to win, even if Flagg isn't at 100%.
Right. And what scouts will want to see from Neville is his versatility, his ability to create his own shot, to make plays for others. Can he step up when the pressure is on? These tournament games are the ultimate test.
Absolutely. Then there's Kaman Malwak. He's described by Hoopstock.net as a really strong defender, a force in the paint. He's got those incredible physical attributes: 7'2" aperture, a 7'6" wingspan, 250 pounds. I mean, the guy is a physical specimen.
Yeah, you can't teach size.
Right?
And for NBA teams that are looking for, rim protection, for guys who can rebound and defend, Malawak's physical profile is definitely intriguing.
It's intriguing. And while the article doesn't say that he's going to be the #1 pick, they do suggest that he could significantly climb up draft boards, potentially even become the top center taken. So, he's definitely someone to watch.
Absolutely. A strong tournament performance could solidify his status as a high lottery pick.
Okay. So moving on, let's talk about Baylor's VJ Edgecombe. Hoopstock.net lays out this really clear scenario where he could really shoot up the draft rankings.
Yeah.
They say that if Baylor makes a deep run in the tournament to the Elite Eight or further, and Edgecombe plays a key role, he could become a top 3 pick.
Wow. Top 3.
Yeah, top 3, potentially even jumping ahead of Ace Bailey.
That's a huge jump.
It's a huge jump.
Yeah.
And it shows you how much weight NBA scouts put on tournament success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, a player who shines in the NCAA tournament, who helps his team win big games, that really increases his value in the eyes of NBA teams.
Yeah, it shows that he can perform under pressure, that he has that winner's mentality. And Edgecombe, he's described as a 6'5" wing, 180 pounds, averaging 15 points and 5.6 rebounds a game. The key for him, according to hoopstock.net, is consistency. Can he maintain his level of play throughout the tournament?
Especially his outside shooting. I mean, if he can shoot the ball well from the perimeter, that's going to really help his stock.
Right. Because if he's streaky, if he disappears for a game or two, that's going to raise some red flags.
Definitely. NBA teams want to see players who could be reliable, who they can count on night in and night out.
All right. So now let's talk about a team that hoopstock.net is really high on. Illinois. They see them as a bit of a dark horse. They're a 6th seed. They're facing a Xavier in the first round.
Interesting matchup.
Very interesting matchup. And the player they really highlight is Kasparas Jakusionis. He's their guard, and he's got this really well-rounded stat line: 15 points, 5.6 rebounds, 4.6 assists per game.
Wow, he does a little bit of everything.
He does a little bit of everything, and Hoopstock.net really emphasizes his versatility. He's 6'6". He can play both on and off the ball. He can score. He can pass. He can defend.
So like a complete player.
Yeah, he does. The scout who wrote the article even called him a potential elite playmaker. He says that Jakusionis has very few weaknesses on the offensive end. And they suggest that if Illinois makes a deep run in the tournament, his draft stock could really jump.
Makes sense. I mean, if he can lead his team to some upset wins, that's really going to impress NBA scouts,
Absolutely. And the article even suggests that he could be a guy who contributes to an NBA team right away.
which is, incredibly valuable. I mean, teams are always looking for players who can step in and make an impact from day one.
Okay, let's switch gears now. Let's talk about a really exciting first-round matchup, Oklahoma versus UConn. Hoopstock.net calls this one of the best games to watch in the entire first round, and their focus is on Oklahoma's Jeremiah Fears. They see him as one of the most polished guards in this draft. He's 6'4" layer, and he's described as a guy who can really take over a game, who can carry his team in those clutch
And I'd
moments.
love to see that. A guy who's not afraid of the big moments.
Yeah, exactly. And Hoopstock.net sets the bar pretty high. They say that he should be aiming for at least 25 points in every tournament game.
That's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points, but his season averages are already impressive. 17 points, 4.1 rebounds, 4.1 assists per game. So he's definitely capable of putting up big numbers.
Yeah, he's got the talent. And what's really interesting is the hoopstock.net scouts projection. They say he's likely to be a lower lottery pick, but they also think he could make a real impact in the NBA right away.
Yeah, so maybe not a top 5 pick, but a guy who could step in and contribute from day one. That's really valuable.
Absolutely. And how he performs in the tournament, how he leads his team against a tough opponent like UConn, that's going to be really telling for NBA scouts.
All right, let's talk about one more player. Derek Queen from Maryland. Hoopstock.net thinks Maryland has a good chance to upset Florida in the first round.
Upset, huh? Interesting.
Yeah, they think Maryland could pull it off. And Queen, they call him an elite big. He's averaging 16.3 points and 9 rebounds a game.
Those are impressive numbers for a big man.
They are. Now, Queen is a little bit different from some of the other prospects we've talked about. He's 20 years old, so he's not your typical young freshman.
Right, he's a little bit older.
Yeah. And so the main question for NBA teams, according to hoopstock.net, is how his game will translate to the NBA. He's 6'10", so he's a little bit undersized for a center.
But yeah, size is always a question mark for big men, especially in the NBA.
Absolutely. But hoopstock.net also highlights his mobility and his ability to stretch the floor. He can shoot the ball a little bit. He can handle the ball a little bit. Those are skills that are really valuable for big men in today's NBA.
Definitely. And if he can showcase those skills against a tough opponent like Florida, that's going to help his draft stock.
Absolutely. Oh, and hoopstock.net also has a quick note on UConn's Liam McNeely.
Good Neely, okay.
Yeah, they don't project him as a #1 pick, but they say he could make a case to jump into the top 7. He averaged 14.5 points and 6.1 rebounds this season.
Not bad at all.
No, not bad at all. And playing on a team like UConn, a team that has championship aspirations, that's a great platform for him to showcase his skills.
Definitely. I mean, playing winning basketball is always a plus in the eyes of NBA scouts.
All right, so let's bring it all together. What's the key takeaway here from this hoopstock.net article? I think it's that there's a lot of uncertainty at the top of the draft because of Cooper Flagg's injury.
Uncertainty, yeah, that's the key word.
And that creates this really interesting opportunity for all these other players in the tournament. They have a chance to really impress scouts, to maybe even move up into that top spot.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that those Rutgers freshmen, Harper and Bailey, they're missing out on this opportunity. Their season's over. They don't have this platform to showcase their skills.
Right. So as March Madness gets underway, we've got these really compelling draft storylines unfolding. We've got the Cooper Flagg saga. Will he play? How will he play? Will he enter the draft? And then we've got this group of players who could potentially make a huge leap. Guys like Edgecombe, Maluak, Nwepel, Jakusionis, Fears, Queen.
And, I think what's so fascinating about all this is just how much the draft landscape can change during the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a player can have a couple of great games and suddenly he's a lottery pick. Or he could struggle and see his stock plummet. It's that unpredictable.
And it's that exciting.
And it's that exciting. So, to all of you out there listening, who are you going to be watching? Who are you most excited to see? And could we see another surprise this year? Another guy who comes out of nowhere and shoots up the draft boards?
Yeah, could we have another Jared McCain year? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I guess we will.